What's going on, everyone? Welcome to Sacred Cards. Today I'm coming at you with an update to my Witchcrafter deck profile for April 2024. This is by far the most popular deck on my channel and one that the community loves. It really does deserve some more support, but if you want to take a break from the format and play something fun and engaging, then I highly suggest giving this deck a try. It's a pure 40 card build that it's a lot of fun to play using its unique playstyle. I've been working with the deck for about 5 years now, basically since the archetype was first released with Infinity Chasers. Definitely one of my favorite sets of all time. I'm constantly messing around with the ratios and always trying to keep the build as pure as possible to ensure the deck does what it does best. So with all that said, I'll go through my deck list and try and explain the cards as best I can. Let's get right into it here. Starting things off with the high-level witches, one copy of Witchcrafter, Madame Vere. Vere is the main boss monster. Quick effect, you can discard a spell, negate the effects of all monsters your opponent controls till the end of the turn. Also, if your spellcaster monster battles, you can reveal any number of spells with different names in your hand, increase the attack and defense by 1,000 for each card revealed until the end of the turn. Next up, one of my favorite cards in the deck, one copy of Witchcrafter Golem Aruru. This card has the ability, quick effect, when your opponent activates a card or effect that targets your spellcaster monster or targets it for an attack. Quick effect, target a card your opponent controls and one spell in your graveyard. Special summon this card from your hand, then return the targeted card to the hand. During your opponent's standby phase, recycle this card back to the hand, allowing you to use the effect again. For the other boss witch, I play one copy of Witchcrafter Hane. When Witchcrafter Hane is on the field, your opponent cannot target other spellcaster monsters you control with card effects. Also, quick effect, you can discard one spell, then one face-up card your opponent controls and destroy it. And then last of the high-level witches is one copy of Witchcrafter Edel. I really like having access to this card because it does come up often. She's really good if you need to get a high-level witch out of your hand when you don't have access to the Unveiling spell card. Edel can quick effect, discard a spell, special summon a Witchcrafter monster from your hand. Also, you can tribute this card, target a spellcaster monster in the graveyard, special summon it back to your field. Now for the Witchcrafter students, I play 3 copies of Witchcrafter Shmieta. All of the lower level Witchcrafter monsters share the effect that during the player's main phase, quick effect, you can tribute this card, discard a spell, special summon in any Witchcrafter monster from your deck. Shmieta can banish herself from the graveyard, send one Witchcrafter card from your deck to the graveyard. Really good for follow-up plays and increasing the number of spells in your hand by the end of the turn. Next, I'm playing 3 copies of Witchcrafter Jenny. You can banish this card and one Witchcrafter spell from your graveyard. This effect becomes that spell's effect. This will allow you to use the same effect twice in a turn, which can be very helpful, especially when you're trying to apply certain effects depending on the current situation. And then now for the 2 copies of Witchcrafter Pitor. You can banish this card from your graveyard to draw a card, then send a Witchcrafter card from your hand to the graveyard. So you always want to make sure you have one in hand prior to activating this effect, but it does help you gain a card advantage. And then last of the Witchcrafter monsters, I like to play 2 copies of Witchcrafter Pottery. If you have no cards in your hand, you can banish this card from the graveyard, then add a Witchcrafter spell from your graveyard back to your hand. It's always good to see a Witchcrafter name, so I like to play a good amount of the lower level monsters. And then last of the monsters is a bit of a tech card in one copy of Blazing Cartesia the Virtuous. Has the ability that during the main phase, quick effect, fusion summon a level 8 or higher fusion monster using material from your hand or field. Plus, during the end phase, if a fusion monster was sent to the graveyard, you can recycle this card from the grave back to the hand. 1 copy is perfect for the deck, in my opinion. Now that's it for the monsters. It is a small amount because you want to see more spells than monsters, so I like to adjust my ratios accordingly. Now for the spells, starting off with your main searcher, triple copies of Witchcrafter Creation. This card lets you add any Witchcrafter monster from your deck to the hand. All of the Witchcrafter spells share the effect that if you didn't use the card's first effect, they return themselves from the graveyard back to the hand during your end phase, as long as you control a Witchcrafter monster. Now for the fusion spell, 3 copies of Witchcrafter Confusion Confession. You can fusion summon 1 fusion monster from your X deck using monsters from your hand or field as material, including a Witchcrafter monster, giving you easy access to your copies of Vice Madame, which is a very powerful card to get access to at any stage of the game. For recovery, I play 3 copies of Witchcrafter Holiday. I think this card is very important for the deck because if your opponent is able to get your big witches off the board, you want a way to revive them as soon as possible. I was playing 2 copies, but really wanted to play a 3rd. You can target a Witchcrafter monster in the graveyard and special summon it. It's essentially an in-archetype monster reborn for the deck. Really great card, plus the art is amazing. Next, for the 2-ofs, I like to play 2 copies of Witchcrafter Collaboration. This is another one of my favorite cards. Collaboration can target a Witchcrafter monster you control, and that card can make a 2nd attack during the battle phase this turn. Also, if it attacks, your opponent can't activate spells or traps until the end of the damage step, which is also really nice. Next up, I play 2 copies of Witchcrafter Unveiling. This quick play spell can special summon a Witchcrafter monster from your hand, and if you do, for the rest of the turn, your opponent can't activate cards in response to your spellcaster's monster's effects. Now for spell trap removal, I have 2 copies of Witchcrafter Draping. This is another quick play spell that can target spells and traps your opponent controls up to the number of Witchcrafter monsters you control and return them to the hand. For continuous spells, we have 1 copy of Witchcrafter By Street. By Street provides protection for the first time each Witchcrafter monster would be destroyed by a battle or card effect. It is not destroyed. Also, if a Witchcrafter monster would discard a spell to activate an effect, you can send this card from the field to the graveyard instead. I like to send this one during my opponent's turn so you can get it back during your turn. And then next is a single copy of Witchcrafter Scroll. All of the Witchcrafter spells have great synergy within the archetype, so you like to see them as part of the strategy. Scroll is the effect once per turn when your spellcaster monster destroys a monster by battle. You can draw a card, and just like By Street, if a Witchcrafter monster would discard to activate an effect, you can send this card to the graveyard instead. And another way to fuse for Vice Madame, I have 1 copy of Magicalized Fusion. This is another way to fusion summon by banishing materials from your field or graveyard. 1 copy is perfect in my opinion, and we don't mind banishing our monsters as we do have ways to recycle and recover them if needed. Next up, I've decided to play 3 copies of Forbidden Droplet. In my opinion, this card is perfect for the deck. The deck has many ways of dealing with the opponent's cards within its own archetype, but this card serves 2 main purposes. You can send cards from your hand or field to negate the effects of the same amount of monsters on the opponent's field, and they can't respond with the same type you sent, whether you send monsters, spells, or traps. The nice thing about this card is that the cost helps us because any spells we send will return to our hand at the end phase via their own effects. Plus, our own monsters have graveyard effects that we can take advantage of as well. Next, best card in the deck, my one copy of Reasoning. Some of you already know how much I love this card. Hands down, I'd play 3 copies in this deck if I could. Your opponent calls out a monster level, and you excavate cards from the top of your deck until you hit a monster. If they called the level right, send all cards to the graveyard, but if not, special summon that monster. All the spells you sent can return back to your hand at the end phase. And the last spell card we play is 1 copy of Called by the Grave. Extremely important for this deck because we tribute and discard for cost, so unfortunately an Ash Blossom can hurt pretty bad, but all in all, just a great card to have access to. And that's it for the spells. Now I play just 2 traps in the deck in 1 copy of Witchcrafter Patronus and 1 copy of Witchcrafter Masterpiece. Patronus is a continuous trap that lets you target a spellcaster that is banished or in your graveyard, shuffle it back into the deck, then you can add a Witchcrafter spell from your deck to your hand. Also, if this card is in your graveyard, you can banish it to target any number of banished Witchcrafter spells with different names, add them back to your hand. Very nice. Masterpiece works really well, especially with the ratios that I've put together for this deck, while keeping this card in mind because it has really good synergy with the strategy. You could target a spell in either graveyard and add a copy of the same name from your deck to your hand. It also has the ability during either player's turn, you can banish this card and any number of spells from the graveyard, special summoning Witchcrafter of the same level as the spells you banished. Well, that's it for the main deck. Now moving on to the extra deck. You don't always go into the extra, so a lot of this can be up to personal preference. But one of my favorite cards in the deck is the boss monster from Magnificent Mavens, triple copies of Witchcrafter Vice Madame. You can fuse her with any Witchcrafter and a spellcaster monster. You can activate each of her quick effects once per turn. Each time a spell card or effect or Witchcrafter monster effect is activated, you can either destroy a card on the field, special summon a level 6 or lower Witchcrafter monster from your hand or deck, or you can add back a Witchcrafter spell or trap from your graveyard back to the hand. Next is a few Link monsters, starting with 1 copy of Selene, Queen of the Master Magicians. When Link summoned, you place counters on this card up to the number of spells on the field and in the graveyards. During the main phase, quick effect, remove 3 counters to special summon spellcaster from your graveyard to a zone she points to. And then Link 2s, I have 1 copy of Crowley, the First Prophecyr, and 1 copy of Akashic Magician. Crowley will let you normal summon a level 5 or higher spellcaster monster from your hand without tributing. Akashic Magician, when it's link summoned, can return each monster it points to back to the hand. Its other effect doesn't ever come up because I've never been able to co-link it, but it is an option to have. Now, following that up, I play 5 Charmers for all the different attributes we play. I play 1 Light, 1 Wind, 1 Water, 1 Fire, and 1 Earth. So yeah, just different Charmers for different attributes that we play, depending on whatever might come up, depending on what your opponent is playing. For the non-spellcaster monsters, I have a copy of Nightmare Phoenix and a copy of Nightmare Unicorn, mainly just for toolbox utility. Pretty self-explanatory. Phoenix is a link 2 that will allow you to discard a card, destroy a spell trap on the field. Unicorn is a link 3 that will allow you to discard a card to target a problematic card on the field, shuffle it back into the deck. Next, I have a Link 1 monster in Artemis the Magistus Moon Maiden. Now, I love Magistus and that whole archetype, as I've showcased their profile on my channel, so go check that out if you want to see another spellcaster strategy. But she is here for the situations where you have a lower level witch on the field. It's an easy way to get them in the graveyard where they can have access to their graveyard effects. And then finally, the last monster I play is a Lone Xyz monster in one copy of Downward Magician. This card gains 200 attack for each material it has, and if it attacks a defense position monster, inflict piercing battle damage. And if this card battles, detach material. Well, that's it for the deck profile. I really hope you enjoyed it. If there's anything you like or don't like, please leave me a comment telling me what you think. Be sure to like the video if you did, and subscribe for more content. Thank you for your support. I'm SacredCards, and I'll see you all in the next one.